I'm zooming in again. I'm on vacation.
Nope, guess not. Bet you can hear me now.
There you go.
He is there. He's got you on.
Can you hear me?
Okay. We can hear you.
I'm just running down to
Hey guys, so we have no Tim?
No Tim tonight.
Yeah, I guess I'm taking it.
Alrighty, Mike.
You're on.
And have you got our audio?
Yep, we're all set to go whenever you want to start.
All right. Well, we've got 4. I guess technically we have a quorum. We can start the work session. It being 6:30, I'll bring this September 8th, 2021 meeting of the Chelmsford Planning Board to order. And I guess our first order of business is master plan review. And we talked about the economic development chapter. As we discussed last time, and we're not digging into every detail of every one of these chapters, but if anybody's got any thoughts or comments on it, anybody?
I haven't looked at it since the last meeting, but I know when I looked at it regarding, because I mean, obviously from the area of North Chelmsford, it still has as an initiative to, on the economic development piece of it, to develop the Route 40 interchange. And I
Is that
thought,
sort of dead issue at this?
well, I knew it was part of the first master plan.
Yeah.
And that was the question I asked last week, if they were updating the section of the initiatives on the right-hand side that pop out.
Oh, okay.
It's on that as, so I just didn't know if they were still considering that should be a goal out of the master plan committee, if that was an actual discussion, that maybe it's the north side of Route 40 that they're talking about, or if that's just
Okay,
something from previous.
I
So
think
this
that-
is the
yeah.
statement, target economic investment in the following areas? That
Yes.
included Route 40?
Yeah, it was on the right-hand side.
Yeah, it is. It's on the front page of it.
Right. So I just didn't know if that was left over from the 2010, or is that actually a discussion point that came up from the committee this year?
No, it didn't come up this year that I recall. Do you recall, Evan?
looking for, what page is it on, or what part of the document?
It's on the front page of economic development,
Front
Evan.
page?
Yeah, there's a blue bar on the front page
Okay,
of
so
it.
that
and
is
it's
a
at the bottom.
carryover.
All right. well,
That's a carryover. It can be wordsmith.
The question, I think, on the table is, should we take the Route 3 Route 40 interchange off that?
The actual body of the report
It addressed everything that happened.
updates it accordingly.
Yeah.
It does.
So
Where it
yeah,
stands today
Yeah.
and how we had the committee, it was properly done.
Yeah,
I just
so
didn't,
the first page in that box are just carryovers because they were very high level. But yeah, at this point, it probably makes sense to,
Remove it.
Change its wording at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah, because that's not going anywhere.
Okay, yeah, we can certainly deal with that. Were there any other thoughts and comments on economic development? I thought it was, well, I was there and involved, so I guess.
Well, I guess my question on economic development is in regards to this number 3 in our work session of growth strategy. And is there something going on with this growth strategy issue? And I don't even want to say initiative at this point because I don't know enough about it. But is there something going on or something behind this growth strategy issue that should feed back into the economic development section of the master plan? And I mean, the
Good
timing's
question.
really bad, to bring them together, but in that we only do a master plan once every 10 years, you would think you would want to get it in there if there indeed does need to be an initiative. So,
Well, it just so happens, as I look out in the audience, that we may have a couple of people here
That
who
can
could shed some light
answer-
on that.
Yeah. So I would suggest, I mean, if nobody has any other issues on the economic development section, I would suggest we talk about item 3 and then go back to economic development.
Well, we have, we can find some, we can get some information here. We
Yeah.
have people in the audience who
Exactly.
are keenly aware of the growth strategy. Hey, thanks, Paul.
It's strange being at this part.
Yeah, right.
I'm Paul Cohen, Town Manager, and good evening, and thank you for having us here. And I'm here with Select Board Chair Virginia Crocker-Timmons, and I guess the answer to your question is we envisioned that the master plan would be completed, and then that would then springboard to this discussion on growth strategy. So
That's a problem.
We're not trying to supplant it or get ahead of it.
Yeah.
We're just trying to, get our hands around it, and then. So anyway, that hopefully
Okay.
addresses your immediate question.
In other words, he's very diplomatically saying, we're late.
No, we're just trying, no, we're just
That
trying.
is true.
I mean, the
I think
thing
that's
is,
fair. That's completely
in terms of
fair.
economic development, this
Yeah.
section really does not address a strategic methodology of growth. Or even a strategic methodology of stable state. It identifies, it profiles the current state, and it identifies opportunities, but I don't think it makes any position whatsoever in terms of where we should go as a town economically. What's the right thing to do? You know?
Yeah, how do we know?
Well, I mean, that's the point. That's the point, okay? So, and frankly, the master plan in general doesn't really say what we should be. It says what we could be. And I don't know if that's a problem or not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's simply here's where we are, here's where our strengths and weaknesses are, and these are the opportunities that the Master Plan Committee has been able to identify, certainly with massive amounts of help from NEMCOG, of things that could be used to change in some way, improve. I'm not even sure that I'd, put that much of a verdict on it, but certainly opportunities.
Yeah. Okay, well,
and-
yeah.
The thing is, a lot of people think of the master plan as this massive determination of where the town is supposed to go. And it really isn't. It's a report of where the town could go.
I personally think that ideally we should be identifying where we would like to go more as opposed to like where we could go. And, within certain areas, maybe delineating priorities. For instance, we now, as of whatever, the last week or 10 days are now out of the safe haven, which I'm quite unpleased about. And I would like to make it a priority for us as the planning board to try and help plan where we might identify sites for some, what do we need, 44 units of affordable housing to get back under the safe haven at least. And so I don't know who's in charge of like identifying sites and or looking for grants and or I don't know if that's something that the town development office does or whether in my opinion, I'd like it to be a collaboration maybe between the select board, the planning board, the housing advisory board, David, if we kind of troubleshot and thought about, where are there sites that we could put units that would work and help us whittle down our very long waiting list for affordable housing and get away from vulnerability to hostile 40Bs. I mean, I feel like that's a big thing that we just didn't do, was maintain the safe haven, which, unfortunately, I guess we were close and we thought we were close and above, and now we're close and below. So I don't exactly know how the time frame of these things work and what kind of a time frame we might expect a hostile 40B and how much time we have to try and get some friendly 40Bs permitted and cited, but I think it's only going to happen if we work on it.
So I'll take some of that.
Yeah.
The housing plan, which is separate from and referenced by the master plan, is the location that we identify potential sites for affordable housing. Most, but not all, affordable housing is at the discretion of the developers and development money, and independent developers and developer money. David and the Housing Advisory Board, what's David's organization called? Yeah,
Yeah.
are in the business of developing affordable housing, and in some ways the town does contribute to that, but that is not town-owned housing or town-developed housing. So when you say you don't know how we allowed ourselves to not build enough, the fact is we as a town are not the ones that build affordable housing. It is strictly, what we do is encourage it or discourage it, we facilitate it, but it is development money and developers that see an opportunity in the town and act on it.
Well, I mean, we do have some community preservation funds, and we do have the ability to make developers build units, and we haven't been doing that, right?
No, we don't have-
We have discussed that in the
Yeah.
last several meetings. So that's
Right.
being addressed. I hope it's addressed effectively, but we'll find out. Paul?
But to come back to
Yeah.
your bigger issue, Nan, of whether the document is proscriptive,
Yeah.
whatever, it's my understanding there's a discussion about creating a master plan implementation committee. So by definition, an implementation committee.
Paul, it's an oversight.
No, but I sat on the last implementation committee
Yeah.
a decade ago.
Yeah.
And that was a very prescribed plan of action items and goals, short-term, medium, and long-term, that were action items, that were directed towards efforts. And that's why that's why I asked the question about it.
Yeah.
I do think it is sort of prescriptive in terms of these are the items that we expect and we want you to report back to the planning board and the community on. So there does tend to be an agenda and a direction for the master plan.
Yeah, but
It may not be clear in the document, but that sort of was the direction a year ago, a decade ago, and you
Yeah.
recall,
It was.
that really led to the 129 rezoning and all these, those were action items, and then there were items in recreation and
Oh, yeah.
all the other aspects. So that's what I'm saying is, going to the big question, like you said, is what should we want to be is the big question, and that sort of circles back as to why
Circles
Virginia
back.
and I are here tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Virginia Crocker Timmons, 28 Levitt Lane, and member of the Select Board. Just to go back to Nan's comment and Paul's comment, we wanted to wait for the master plan to be done, not because we thought it was going to necessarily dictate a path forward, but because it was an important set of data and input into the process, which I think might become more clear when Paul and I explain what that objective was all about. So it wasn't that we were necessarily looking for that as the driver behind it, but that it was an important piece of.
It's the
A
base.
data source.
It's the
It's a
base data.
sor- Right, I mean,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
master
And it is.
plan is largely land use and other things. And we had envisioned actually 4 core committees being involved at the outset. And we aren't, to your point, Nan, we don't know what growth means. Does it mean 0%
Yeah.
or something greater than 0? So,
Okay. Yeah, thanks, and
I would have them explain the growth strategy, because they haven't explained it yet.
that's true.
Yeah.
Well, that was the question I
Yeah,
had
what is the
originally
goal?
asked, is
What's
maybe
the-
we should go to
what's the
3
need?
before,
What's
and then
the
come
goal?
back to
What's
this.
What's the purpose?
Well, could you give us the rundown?
This feels like a work session.
It is a work session.
All right, let me just read what the language is in the articulated goal. You may have seen it, but I think just for those watching, and the goal is to work with the Select Board, Planning Board, Finance Committee, and School Committee, the 4 committees that the chair just spoke of, businesses, residents, and other stakeholders to establish a clearer understanding of the desired growth strategy for the town. And then how it would be measured by a kickoff discussion with the 4 boards conducted, process and stakeholders identified, growth strategy articulation and development initiated, assumes the master plan completed, and master plan implementation committee appointed by the end of December. So that's what the assumption on. So again, it sort of is to develop, as you said, a holistic approach of what is it that we wish to be.
What do we want to be?
Yeah, like you said, the plan identifies the strengths, weaknesses, strategies, opportunities, all that. But where do we want to go? And that's really the core of what we're trying to get at. And this is a very helpful part of that, initial step of that discussion, which again would involve those other stakeholders. So that's what we're trying to do, is figure out where do we want to go. We know where we've been, and the question is where do we want to go? And other pieces will help.
Okay, I think I get a feel. Deidre, any more thoughts? Mike?
No.
Okay, I think that clarifies it a bit. Do you guys have enough? The master plan is, I won't say it's done, but it's probably at 95 or 98%. I mean, it's that.
Unless somebody puts a hole on the table.
Yeah.
I mean, unless somebody comes forward pretty darn soon and says, hey, you really needed to consider this and it's not in here. This is what you're going to get.
But you were just saying a few minutes ago that it doesn't, you didn't feel like it delivered what you wanted to, and you were on the committee. So
I didn't say that.
Well, I took it as wasn't complete. It didn't have a vision of where it was going, where to go.
No, what I said is that the master plan is a report of where we are and things we could do.
Right.
And it has assignments, in effect, for other committees, town entities, to evaluate those where we could go. But it doesn't tell them what they're supposed to do with it.
Right.
It doesn't dictate, you have to do this. It identifies that here's an opportunity, you have the responsibility to look into it, to evaluate it.
Mike, you're picking up on the difference between the 2010 master plan and the 2020 master plan.
Yeah.
2010 was very prescriptive. It told the planning board what to do, and the planning board brought it to town meeting.
Yeah.
And at town meeting, the presentation said, as recommended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the debate already took place at master planning, and planning board was expected to then implement.
Okay.
The 2020 master plan is written completely different, with intent. It makes no bold statements. It basically says to the planning board, the overlays have been in place for 6 years, and it recommends that the planning board go back and determine whether they have met the strategic intent.
Whether they're effective.
So there were members on the committee, including myself, that would prefer that the master plan be more strategic, more prescriptive. The committee viewed it as not only an update, but as sanitized as it possibly could be. It doesn't even talk about Groton Road, Route 40.
Right.
It just provides an update. It doesn't make any mention of UMass West Campus other than an update. So it essentially is not, it's for the planning board's consideration. The planning board may go through the recommendations, have a discussion about overlays, and do nothing. Check, we're done. Or the planning board may take a deep dive and have a subcommittee and bring bring revisions to town meeting. But that in and of itself isn't a strategy.
But the concern is, the reason the state has a requirement for a community to have a 10-year master plan is because when developments come in, and Evan can speak to this, I believe, you often can fall back to the master plan as, well, this is why we went to this direction, and to have protection, right? I mean, that, if you want to elaborate on, Evan, that there is that fundamental principle of the master plan as a fallback.
The last 10 years of planning, whether it was master planning, affordable housing planning, economic development planning, the town was able, one, we implemented, and then we were able to leverage state grants because we were able to say, look, we planned, we implemented, we went to town meeting adopted, planning board approved projects under it, so we were doing what we said we wanted to do. So I think the 2020 master plan is, again, the committee didn't really discuss it in detail, but the sense I kind of got was that the sentiment in the community, and we're all aware of it, is the vocal minority doesn't like what has taken place over the last 5, 6, 7 years. And I think the committee kind of updated the master plan with that in mind. It doesn't make any bold statements. It's not a strategic plan. It's for your consideration. And you've heard at the last meeting, you've heard, Henry Parley say, it's not law.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, the 2010 master plan was as close to law as you could possibly get.
The blueprint.
And even that was controversial in the sense as the way it was written. People, developers, attorneys would show up and say, it's in accordance with your master plan. I would go to town meeting and say, it's in your master plan, it's a recommendation.
Yeah.
And so, the trouble that we kind of have collectively is, the master plan is what it is, but it's not a strategic document. And if the planning board or a developer or the town is trying to figure out what it wants to be, based upon whatever limited opportunities we have, this master plan doesn't do that. And so I think that's maybe why the select board have a goal
Yeah.
to discuss, what is the growth strategy?
Yeah, I think that makes some sense. That makes some sense. Paul, did you have something you wanted to throw in there?
Again, just trying to be constructive is, I agree, there's other parts to the plan, like an open space plan.
Yeah.
What lands we want to preserve. There are other parts of the community and other stakeholders who contribute to this. But that's the point. And the reason that I brought this goal forward is it's become very clear that the vision going forward right now is different than it was in the 2010 master plan. And that's why, and it's confusing to me, and I think to Evan and perhaps others, because, and so what happens is, and what it means to us on a daily basis when we're in this building is, when we're approached by potential land users, we don't know how to give feedback.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, because we don't know what to go on. Whether it's something like 255 Princeton Street, or the old Mercury computer site on River Neck Road, we don't know. I mean, we're obviously not, walking around, with blinders on and earmuffs. I mean, so we understand that there's perhaps right now there's, multifamily housing fatigue and these other issues. And we saw at the last town meeting the discussions on the zoning articles having to do with fulfillment centers and so forth. So we're like I said, it's and ironically at the same time we're in a rather, I know they're all unique, but it's a rather transformational period in economic development where before you used to build to market. Now you've got to get ahead of the build. You've got to build before the market because everybody wants to move quickly.
Right.
And this was a discussion that that I was involved with a week ago, where it's like, well, the old days, you discuss where you want to go and you do the design, you'd permit approval. Now, these people want to be in 7 months, and you can't do that.
Yeah.
But yet, if you don't do that, then you're going to miss the market. And right now, it's a very challenging market. That's sort of the question that we have, whether it's 129 we're developing or other aspects, is where do we want to go? And And, quite frankly, the discussion regarding River Neck Road, it's sort of like, Evan and I are scratching our head saying, well, the town's never considered a speculative project before. The last one was probably 20 years ago over on Mill Road, right? Where the town permitted a project and it came in. Well, now, because, the world's changed in 2021 as we're heading into 2022, it's sort of like, well, what feedback do we provide? And to throw up your hand saying we can't tell you is not very reassuring for a property owner or potential investor, because what they want in this world is certainty, as expedited decision, yes and no, we want to go, but when you shrug your shoulders and say, well, we really can't tell you, that's not helping us competitively, and I think that's, and maybe, and again, if the answer is we don't want to go there, well, that's good too, because then we know we're doing
But we need to say
the
it.
will of the community, and that's
They want
really,
us to say it as quickly as we can.
Right.
No, I completely agree with you.
right.
I completely agree with you. I think you've hit the nail on the head.
And I think that the growth strategy discussion and task is really timely, because, from the standpoint of the planning board participation, from the standpoint of master plan participation, with the master plan, we went out and did a fairly large survey of what people were looking for, what they envisioned for the town for the future. And what we got back was a lot of little incremental changes, services. But at the same time, we are hearing everywhere, no growth. Just no growth, no change, no anything that will bring in traffic, school children, or anything that consumes our resources. And frankly, in both of those roles, I'm going to tell you, I don't know whether that's the sentiment of the majority of the town, or whether that's the sentiment of the noisy few. And I don't know how we're going to figure that out, but we need to.
You had a pretty wide range, right? On
There
your-
is a huge range.
There's
What
a-
you guys did, and
Yeah.
I don't think it's a vocal minority. I think it's most of the town.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
They may think the growth is coming too quickly, too fast, being approved too quickly. So that's the disconnect right here, I'm hearing.
I agree, but I think those fundamental questions have probably existed in the community for decades, right? If we were standing in this room, well, we wouldn't be, if we were standing in the community in the 1960s when they were transforming the farms, they'd be saying the same things. We're growing too fast, we don't want this, everybody wants to be the last person to move into town, they don't want it to change once they
Yeah.
arrive. And so the question is this the same and growth and change eventually happens, or has there been a sea change, but much like the turbulence we've seen from the pandemic in terms of what is the market in the future in terms of occupancy, growth, housing, office space, retail development, everything else. I mean, we're in a transformational world period right now, and so that's the question that we don't know. So is it, and you saw it as a board.
Yeah. We do.
Oh, we're
Now,
right in
look
the
at this
middle
on
of
the
it.
table. I don't know of any project that's in recent years that's been warmly received, right? And history will judge, I guess, or people can judge whether they were good decisions or poor decisions on either side in terms of what was approved, rejected, withdrawn, moved forward. I mean, and so that's the question is right, how do we get a bearing on what is the pathway forward? And as you know, the world is changing,
Yeah.
and our communication is changing, right? 10 years ago, we weren't sitting here thinking about social media, we weren't, we had a more vibrant local press, we had but everything is changing, and so it's the same questions that we're seeing at the local level are obviously happening in other communities and at other levels of government, and that creates the uncertainty, and I think that's sort of the question that we really need to, like you said, is what is the strategy to go forward?
So I think you and I have been here like over 10 years at this point, and it's really just the last 2 years and predominantly the last year where every project we have has a full house contingency against it. I mean, you didn't see that 10 years ago.
Well, I don't know.
It's not that you didn't,
Remember,
it's not
remember
that
the
you.
barn-like structure.
Barn-like
Oh, yeah,
structure.
well, there is that.
Grist Mill development was not one we received. Remember, that was going to ruin the image of the center. It was going, there was a lot of
Yeah.
pushback, much like we saw on Grist Mill 2. There was a lot of pushback on Grist Mill 1.
True.
And many of them were by the same
There
people.
was. There was.
But remember, when I arrived, Hillside Gardens. You remember Hillside Gardens, right? That was a 2-year ordeal by the select board on a
dear.
40B project. And, right, I mean, it's obviously completed today, but that was not fun. And at that,
Yeah.
I mean, and I got on the tail end of that. So I would, like I said, I would suggest is that there's really, I don't know the period where things were warmly received in terms of that type
I
of
just don't
development.
ever remember that every project you went into was going to be a war.
Yeah.
And it is today.
I don't think West Campus is gonna be a war.
Oh, I bet you.
I don't
I
see it.
bet you.
Well,
And you could talk to people about how Williamsburg
Yeah.
was developed
Yeah.
and so forth.
yeah,
I'm sure.
there's some stories behind Williamsburg. that are
Exactly.
before
So
my
that-
time, but I've
Yeah.
heard them whispered.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Whispered
I
in
bet.
dark,
Yeah.
shadowy corners.
So, not to belabor this, because
Yeah.
obviously we'll talk about it a lot more, many of these examples are residential in nature.
Yes,
right.
that's.
But from some of the board members who have been here long enough, when the neighborhoods have a choice between commercial development, which is allowed by underlying zoning, or residential, which comes in via the overlay, and 110's a good example, the neighborhoods always choose residential.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the board, 241 Littleton Road,
Yep.
50 Hunt, the 40B. The neighborhood and community both had an opportunity to build those as commercial. So let's set aside and just assume that moving forward, everyone agrees that we're not talking about multifamily residential as a growth strategy. And we're talking about underlying commercial industrial zoning. And then let's assume we only focus on 129.
Yeah.
What does the town want to do with 6, 7, 8, or 1 million square feet of vacant office building?
Yeah.
It's almost as if the community thinks that that office users are going to move back into those buildings.
Yeah,
And yet, when you go to
haven't
town
yet.
meeting and you bring up other uses, they're dismissed. To me, that's what this discussion needs to be about, is not proactive zoning and mixed-use overlays and COI things, but what are you doing with your bread and butter 129? How are you going to fill those buildings and be competitive? Because if every use requires a special permit or a town meeting rezoning, as Paul said, they're going to just skip you right over.
It takes
Right,
too
that's
long
the-
for an
that's the
investor
slow
to.
road.
Right, so
Yeah.
there's too much at stake with 129, because that's the expectation.
Yeah.
You can follow Facebook, and you can see that people say, well, why should we approve more overlays when you didn't fix 129 like you said you were going to? So, to me, a growth strategy is, foremost about 129. We need to all be on the same page when it comes to 129, because those are the big investors that come in, and as Paul said, they want a quick answer. They're not looking for a fight. And right now, I'm not sure there is a clear answer or guidance to be given by anybody or to anybody. Any project over 20,000 square feet requires a special permit major business complex. And the challenge is that if neighborhoods want to organize, then you're not talking about zoning or a growth strategy, you're talking about something else. But right now, I'm not, I think if the 4 boards could have a discussion and ideally, maybe prioritize 1 or 2 geographic areas that are important to the town, and maybe we can come up with an articulate, unified vision or strategy as to how to get to a vision. But what's concerning is that, I think there's a lot of people who think that those office buildings are going to just
Fill themselves, yeah.
Yeah.
or worse yet, leave them vacant,
Yeah.
because they've gotten used to it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well, that's probably about what we can do here, but before we go into the regular part of the meeting, I note that David Hedison is online, and when he's around, there's usually something interesting to be heard. And I was thinking it might have something to do with the recent determination that we've fallen under our 10%. So,
If I'm able just to share a couple comments or thoughts just for all of you to digest, I'd really appreciate the opportunity.
Please do.
Okay. Earlier in the meeting, Evan had talked about what the master plan had looked like for 2010. And others had talked about, really it gave direction to a number of stakeholders or developers or parties. At one point, because the town had spoken and identified certain areas of town to be developed as housing, we, as part of the community, went forward and assumed some risk and went forward to develop those sites. Today, we're sitting in a position now where I don't know where the town would like us to develop, what the town would like us to develop, and it's really left me in a situation where, right now I have 3 projects in Westford, because Westford has made it very clear where they want things built, how they want things built. So for someone that represents a number of the residents in the community that are in need of housing, just earlier I had the 3rd senior in Chelmsford text me on my cell phone and tell me she's going to be homeless by spring. I am struggling after 30 plus years in this position to have answers for the people that can no longer afford their homes, want to remain in the community, but yet we have planning board members, select board members, town meeting members that see zero growth as the only option. I need help. I need direction. The community needs direction. Do we want to see an overlay? Do we want to see existing public housing sites redeveloped and density doubled? Do we want to see, is there public property that's owned that can be developed for 100% affordable housing? Even now, I feel like I'm going out on a limb on the UMass West campus because I'm hearing a lot of rumbling from certain members of the community where their goal is just to get back to the 10% without even considering what those affordable units will look like and will they be affordable to the community. So any conversation that goes on, I would just like to, be able to be, to chime in on occasion just as a gut check, because it's more than reaching 10%. It's being able to provide direction to people whose heart and soul is in taking care of people in the community and actually providing opportunities for people that are seriously in need. They exist. They don't show up. They're not part of the vocal group that comes and shouts at you. They come to my office and shout at me. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Pretty sure I didn't get an email with the agenda.
That's,
We didn't either.
gives one pause to think. All right, I guess, well, I hear you. I think I know what you're saying. Whether we can get that,
What are you doing?
whether we can apply that
No, Henry, hang on.
in the context of the master plan in a way that will give some kind of more positive
September
guidance,
8th.
I don't know.
I didn't get it on mine.
Refresh.
That's,
Do a refresh.
all right. That's to consider. I don't think we got a good answer for you right now. This is something we're gonna have to think about.
It's a work session. I just wanted to provide
Yeah.
some thoughts.
Well,
to
thank you, and thank you for coming
Put in your head.
as well.
Something to strive for, anyway.
Yes. Thank
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay, we have already made it to almost 7:15, and I think we should probably wrap up the work session and go into the regular session, which I don't believe requires a new announcement that we're in a meeting, but it does take us to some of the administrative items on the agenda. First one being 10 technology to review and approve decision.
Yes, you have a draft decision in front of you. Fairly straightforward. Christina did ask me to specifically insert special condition number 3. It's highlighted on top of page 4. So this codifies and articulates the sewer effluent meter that was in the DPW.
Right, yes.
Letter. So it's a special condition. So that serves to make sure that the requirement doesn't get lost. It can be
Thanks.
enforced as part of the special permit decision by the building commissioner. In addition, there's also the sewer division's permit and regulations that they can use to.
Yeah, and their statement that we're okay on the
Exactly,
sewer.
yeah.
All right.
I would like to see an edit on this, on fact number 16, to simply remove the first word.
Just say new landscape material.
Yeah, there's nothing significant about their landscaping.
Okay.
That's good.
Sorry.
Well, we're not mincing words.
No,
here.
no.
Okay, that's fair, that's okay by me. Anybody have any other thoughts?
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine, okay. Yeah, I think we're fine with this. Any further comment before I entertain a motion?
Okay, I move that we accept the terms of the certificate of decision with the edits that were made here tonight.
I second that.
Moved by Nancy, seconded by Paul. Additional comments? Deirdre, you okay?
No, I'm fine.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zip. Okay,
Okay, so next one is 50 Drum Hill, draft decision. Again, this one's fairly straightforward. I'll just draw your attention to special condition number 1. As drafted, this reflects what I thought I heard Mr. Parley introduce, that the board wanted to see the landscaping along Drum Hill to be
Yeah.
installed
Yeah.
as soon as possible.
yeah, that's a critical piece up there.
I can tell you that I did share this condition with the applicant. We did exchange some emails. They are on the Zoom call this evening. I acknowledge the public hearing is closed, but I would ask or encourage the board to at least hear the applicant's comments. I think they have some concerns on timing and logistics and things of that nature. So, I'd ask for you to use your discretion and
Okay.
see if you want to engage with the applicant, just to, learn a little bit more about what their thoughts may be.
Just, oh, all right.
Ultimately, it's your decision.
Yeah.
As long as it's a reasonable condition. Again, I don't know all the specifics as to what the concerns may be and what the challenges or concerns could be. I think it's worthwhile to hear them.
Yeah,
Maybe there's a better way to deal with this and achieve the same result.
okay.
So,
Well-
so again, I picked issuance of building permit. I mean, there's other triggers, could be foundation permit, it could be a date, it could be tied to something else that I'm not thinking of, or we didn't think of.
Okay, well, if it's okay with the rest of the board, I thought I'd let the proponent in and have a say.
Yeah, I have another edit, but it's
Okay, just don't
not a big
lose
deal.
it, we'll get
Yeah,
to it.
go ahead.
Who would that be, Kai Burke or Alan Roscoe?
I believe,
Yes.
Alan?
Good evening. This is Kai Burke. Good to see you all again. I think our concern with doing the tying landscaping on Drum Hill to issuance of building permit is we're looking to start construction in the fall, and so we would be planting, right at the start of winter, and then the landscaping is going to have to take hold then. In addition, we're going to be irrigating the whole system, and we're planting some new planting beds around the building and south of the building by the ATM. So we kind of have to phase the irrigation to put in. Part of it for the Drum Hill, and then a second part later, as well as just remobilizing the landscape crew. So that's why we would request just putting that at the end, as is typical for landscaping, just tie it to CO.
Yeah, the only problem I have with that whole thing is I was actually at a development the other day, and 3/4 of the way through, and I said, geez, there's no landscaping done here. He goes, well, there's no reason for us to do, nobody's asking for it.
Yeah.
We're asking.
I know we're asking
Yeah.
for it. I mean, I really,
Yeah.
we've been burnt so many times now. I mean, you're gonna be building through the winter. I would say if they could at least do the shrubs out in the front that they were talking about,
Well, I have.
You know how I feel about
I know,
this.
and I have a
I'm,
suggestion here. Suppose we were to say, it shall be completed prior to the issuance of a building permit or as soon thereafter as weather permits. That would let you go through the winter, and I see your point. You probably don't want to be putting an irrigation system in the middle of the winter.
I would say, or by April 1st of 2000.
Or we could make it.
we gotta put a date on it
22.
because,
Just tie
you know, we've been tied in for 2
Yeah.
or 3
Yeah,
years
spring.
with these projects,
that-
and it's
Tie
just
it.
not.
April 1st.
Tie it to the certificate of occupancy.
Well, that's what this,
That's
No, but
always
look at the
done.
one on Drum Hill.
Well,
They
that's-
didn't have the
that's-
last certificate of occupancy, they still don't
Well,
have it.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't take that up with the developer, you should take it up with the town, the building inspector.
No, but
Inspector.
if,
The building inspector should not approve the certificate of occupancy unless all the orders and conditions are met.
but, you know.
That's an
we're-
issue outside of this
Yeah.
group.
I was on a job the other day, there had to be 20 of them. They're like, well, we're not gonna do it unless somebody pushes us.
Well, we'll be pushing.
We have no
we
power to
have no
push here.
ability to do that.
We have no power to
It's
push
the
here.
building
That's the
inspector.
The
problem.
building inspector will get a call,
Yeah.
Um,
or two.
I mean, you know, if it doesn't happen by April 1st, God help them if they ever come in for something else and I'm on the board.
Yeah.
So we just keep what we have, or by April 1st.
Well, let me ask, Kai, do you have a suggestion that would meet what we're trying to accomplish here and would be more reasonable in your mind?
I think we could agree to April 1st. I don't think we'd have a problem.
Perfect.
If you're good with April 1st, are you good with April 1st?
Happy with
here?
it, but I'm okay with it.
All right, I
I
live
live
with
brown anyway in the winter.
it. Okay,
Yeah.
may I suggest then that we simply make this prior to April 1st?
By April 1st.
Or by April 1st, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
Nan, what'd you have?
Sorry, is that going to be before issuance of building permit or April 1st, whichever is later?
CO, he said.
CO.
CO.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make that the CO
Perfect.
instead. I think that's more appropriate.
Because you're gonna be building through the winter, right?
Yeah. They should be able to build
Yeah.
that. Okay, we'll make that the CO. And Nan, you had another edit?
I do. Under that one, number 6, no lighting fixtures shall exceed, I believe that's 4,000 degrees Kelvin, not
Yeah.
4 Kelvin.
Oh, the K.
Yeah, it is 4,000. 4 Kelvin is only slightly higher
I
than
for-
the radiation rate of deep
I
space.
forgot a second K.
You did,
It was
and a
just
space.
1.2 or 1 point something Kelvin.
And I caught you on
That one
it.
Sure did.
Hold on. Nancy, you done? Or
I'm done. That's
The
all
other
I
one I
had.
have is-
It was just I'm sure it was a typo.
under the decision, it's 6-0. I recused myself.
Okay.
On the
Just make sure I
decisions.
had
60,
you,
that'd be 601?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you
Thank you all very much for your time.
recuse on
and
everything?
consideration.
Thank you
this
for
project,
appearing
yes.
tonight.
Thank you all.
Okay, so
That's
all of
perfect.
those votes then need to be modified.
That's right.
plus procedural history number 3.
Yeah,
Usual, okay.
So,
okay.
All right, you can take care of that, Evan?
yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank
Do
you.
we have a motion to thumbs up this?
Kevin, Evan, what's the planning board file number on the front? You've got question marks?
I didn't have that on the decision, so I need to obtain that.
Yeah, it says 06 on the agenda.
Okay, let's go with those 6.
All right.
All right, in that case, I will make a motion to approve the certificate of decision for 50 Drum Hill Road, Planning Board File 2021-06, as amended here. That's it.
Second?
I'll second that.
Got Paul. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
And I've,
Great, thanks.
And I've recused myself.
And yes, and note that the other Mike recuses himself.
All right.
All right. That's taken care of. Number 3, new public hearing. And this is concerning the modifications to the zoning bylaw. Well, actually, I should probably read the
Yes, please.
read this.
Yeah.
The Town of Chelmsford Planning Board will have a public hearing on Wednesday, September 8th, 2021 at 7 o'clock in room 204, Town Offices, 50 Billerica Road, for the purposes of receiving public comment to amend the Town Code, Chapter 195 zoning bylaws, and Chapter 202 subdivision of land as follows. To amend Article 5 off-street parking and loading pursuant and intent number 5, Section 195-21H, J3, and K. Article 8 Environmental Protection Standards, Section 195-40C. Article 9 Landscaping, Section 195-41G and H. Article 10 Earth Removal, C2A, and Sections 195, 104, E4, and 7 for the purpose of amending existing provisions and adding new provisions related to stormwater and low-impact development standards. And to amend Chapter 202 Subdivision of Land, Article 3 Design Standards and Improvements, Section 202.12F, 202.13 C2A, Section 202.14 A, B, C, D, E, and G, Section 202.17B, Section 202.19A and D, 202.21, and 202.22 for purposes of amending existing provisions and adding new provisions related to stormwater and low-impact development standards. With that, Christine, you're on.
Good evening. Thank you. Christina Papadopoulos, Town Engineer. So Colleen has the PowerPoint up for me. Thank you very much. So I'm going to briefly go over very high overview of what the changes are. So these are the zoning and subdivision changes. So why do we need to change the codes? So EPA has a municipal separate storm sewer system, the MS4 permit, that allows the town to discharge stormwater to the waters of the U.S. This MS4 permit requires the permittees, which means the town, must update their regulatory mechanisms this year. Permittees shall develop, implement, and enforce a program to address post-construction stormwater runoff from all new development and redevelopment sites that disturb 1 or more acres. And that is what this does. The permittees also must modify their regulations to encourage low-impact development, which we call LID. Okay, so that's what we've done through these 4 different code changes. The stormwater bylaw that was passed in spring of '21 was basically the first step towards complying with these requirements. And these changes in the town code help keep consistency throughout the town regulations. Because if we just did the changes that we did in the spring, then nothing else makes sense. So now we have to go back. I promised I'd come back and change the rest of them. Here I am. So basically, they're the next slide, please. And there are 3 revisions and 1 new regulation. So this slide has slightly changed because town council had some input. So the zoning code revisions will need town meeting approval. The subdivision code revisions do not need town meeting approval. They just need planning board approval after a public hearing, which is this. It's been posted. This is a public hearing. And the site plan and special permit regulations and procedures need to be revised. That would need planning board approval, from what I understand. That's how it would happen. And then the 4th document is the new regulation, which does not need planning board approval. It just needs the DPW approval. So it's the DPW Stormwater Management Regulations. So what we've done here is make sure that they're all matching each other and there aren't any conflicts, okay? So the bylaw revisions. For the first one is zoning, chapter 195. The next slide, please. Right. So the first one is changing or adding a term called landscaping, which basically includes green infrastructure, LID, and rain gardens, etc. That's what that does. The next slide is zoning, Article 5, off-street parking. So it changes the purpose and intent by encouraging the use of low-impact development or green infrastructure. The next section, parking and loading, design and location. Adds amendments to allow the use of curb-only, sawtooth curb, and curb edge treatments for parking areas. Also requires street and entrances be designed and consistent with the, what we call the MUTCD, the Manual and Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It was called the wrong thing in our original code, so I updated that. It allows pervious parking material as part of stormwater management design, but the original definition had it limited to certain things, so I got rid of some of the limitations, and it just says supplemental parking areas where excess parking is necessary. It's not limiting anymore. Next one for zoning. The environmental protection
Go
standards.
back just 1 second.
Yes.
So you said supplemental parking.
Yep.
So, under what supplemental parking,
Yep.
are we doing away with, there's been different issues that we've come up with in the past where we've done different things for supplemental parking.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to,
We're not limiting pervious pavement to being encouraged just in supplemental parking. What we're doing is we're getting rid of that limitation and we're encouraging it wherever it seems appropriate, such as, like, you wouldn't want pervious pavement in a drive aisle, but you might want it in the parking stalls. But that's not part of what was originally in the code for pervious pavement, so I've gotten rid of the restrictions.
So you've gotten rid of the restrictions, so we're allowed to use different materials for, you're talking
Yeah.
supplemental parking, like something that's not gonna be used that often, right?
So let's read.
I'm just trying to,
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out
absolutely.
where you're,
So previously it said pervious parking materials, turf grid systems, pervious pavers, gravel, and similar parking materials are allowed for supplemental parking areas where excess parking is necessary on a temporary basis in addition to required parking. Some specific applications may include places of worship, parks, and recreation facilities, or public and private schools. I've gotten rid of most of that. Instead, it has pervious parking is allowed as part of a comprehensive stormwater management design, including LID and green infrastructure. Use of pervious materials is subject to the approval of the town engineer.
so you're gonna be telling the people what they wanna put in the, I don't know, how do you
No,
feel
so
about that,
I'm-
Nancy?
It's getting rid of
The way I read
the
it.
term for supplemental parking areas. It's getting rid of that.
I'm
It's
talking-
just- it's
I mean,
leaving it more
I'm
open-ended.
just thinking of the church that we did up in Chelmsford. You know, I'm thinking of some of the other stuff that we did. I'm thinking of some of the spots where we put the bricks, you know, where they put the bricks in, where the stuff
Yeah.
goes through.
Yeah.
Is that, but you're gonna be,
I'm removing the limitations.
No, we're not telling them, we're.
Yeah, we're allowing more. We're allowing it in more areas,
Less
rather than
restricted.
just
So
in
it's less
supplemental
restrictive
parking.
than
This whole thing's less restrictive.
It's less
so far.
restrictive
Everything I saw
for
it.
pervious pavement.
all right, I'm just trying to think, you know, we're the ones that have to sit here and work and
Yeah.
hammer this through. That's why I'm thinking,
And this is from the state, you got this?
but you said it's
Yeah, well, it's a federal requirement. The EPA requires us to make these changes
Okay.
that encourage low-impact development. It had been expressed that you would like to see more pervious pavement, so by removing some of the restrictions, I felt that that would encourage more
I'm just trying to make
pervious
sure
pavement.
that I know what we're voting on, that's all. I'm just,
No, absolutely. That's why I want to make sure I read it.
Nancy's still thinking.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and trying to figure out exactly how does it relate to what you're talking about.
But, you know,
You gotta go back one, I think.
Oh, no wonder I can't figure it out.
Gotta go back one.
It's like, that doesn't work. All right.
I mean, do you want to take a look at the actual?
No,
the
I-
code?
all right, I
Code where
get it, but
you can see what I crossed off and what is
I was just
added.
trying to make sure we weren't getting rid of some of the good
Yeah.
stuff that we've been
Yeah.
trying to do, that hopefully we weren't trying to do some of the wrong stuff.
Okay,
All right,
okay. Sorry if I was.
that's fine. No, I just,
if I
if
misspoke
I had a
or-
I just, you gotta, I'm not gonna sit here and nod my head the whole time if I got a question.
No, of course, ask away. That's why I brought all this stuff, so. All right, so we're removing restrictions, allowing more pervious pavement. Okay. So the environmental protection standards, I changed the limitations so that it's just any disturbance totaling 1 acre or more of existing vegetation. Previously, we had it as 2, but now to stay in compliance with, in line with the rest of our regulations, we're doing 1 acre or more. Yes.
Next, just one question. What exactly is meant by a disturbance? I mean, obviously, it's not mowing the lawn, but,
Well, yeah, so typical yard maintenance is exempt from any of this stuff
okay,
anyway.
but,
So that we don't have to worry about. It really is just meant for development. So a disturbance of an acre or more, and could be just cutting an acre of land.
okay, I'm
Cutting
trying to
trees
understand
for
what
an
the
acre.
word disturbance means.
Yep.
Does plowing it disturb?
If it's agricultural use, it's exempt.
Good, that's.
Yep, there's a
Wanna
lot
make
of
sure.
exemptions. Those are
Okay.
all already, that was already exempt
that's
from,
already
from
in
the,
there.
from
Gotcha.
the spring. We've already exempt a whole lot of things.
Got it. Okay.
This is
thank you.
really like construction,
Question answered.
Clear
Yeah.
cutting a lot, basically.
if you clear cut a lot, it just cutting an acre or more of trees would be a disturbance.
But if
'Cause
you
you're
go in
changing
and,
the-
and
the
maintain a
topography.
forested acre, clear out invasives, and do things like that, that's not disturbance within the meaning of this.
Not unless it's actually, like grubbing and like removal and
Yeah, okay.
it's meant to just deter erosion. So
Okay.
if you
I
can see
think
your
you need a
activity.
definition in there of what disturbance, what
Okay.
constitutes a disturbance.
Okay.
It might help, I'm playing devil's advocate, I suppose. a
If
little
it
bit.
has this many questions here, then in application, it's going to
Okay.
have questions.
All right, I'll
Okay.
check to see if there is a definition in one of these 4 documents
Yeah.
that
Okay,
I can
thanks.
just reference, and then
There you go.
Thanks so much.
it should be, but you never know, and that's a good thing for me to check. Thank you. Okay, so next one is landscaping, and basically just added to encourage the use of low-impact development and green infrastructure within a landscaping plan to minimize runoff. So these are just words, I guess, that we've added to sort of just keep reminding people low-impact development over and over and over again. So the next section, administration and enforcement, renames the EPA handbook because it was misreferenced, and now it references the Chelmsford Chelmsford DPW Stormwater Management Regulations, which is that new regulation that I spoke about, so that everybody goes to one place for a comprehensive list of stormwater design requirements. So you're not looking in 4 different documents for design requirements, you just look to one place. It also requires that low-impact design strategies be used to the maximum extent feasible. So again,
How would we
encouraging it.
know what is the maximum extent feasible in order to evaluate a plan?
That's where your judgment would be used. It's,
I mean, it's an education issue.
so you've been able to look at plans before and say, this just really doesn't seem to have enough low-impact development measures. You'd be able to say that in the future, like,
Yeah,
okay,
when we-
there's just
When we talk about feasible, there's
Yeah.
the soil
physically
limitations.
feasible, there's also financially
That's right.
feasible. And
Okay.
Yeah.
I presume that's included. I hope.
Why should we be limited? No,
Yeah, that's a good
seriously,
question.
somebody comes in with a development, I can't afford to put that in. That's not the correct
No.
answer. You paid too much for the land.
Yeah, you pay too much for the land, maybe, but,
You know,
if,
no, this is,
yeah.
you- I would really have a hard time with that development,
Okay.
especially if you're trying to improve the environment, you're
Yeah.
setting the standards.
Yeah.
I don't see, if you can't afford to put a low impact garden in, you're doing the wrong thing.
Well, I guess I was looking at it from another point of view. I mean, I don't know what it costs to put a low-impact garden in. If the thing was solid rock, it might get a little expensive.
Well, then
But
they
then
got,
then it's not functionally feasible.
Yeah, then it's not functional, that's not, you're right, that's not functionally feasible. Okay, I guess we could leave that one.
That's where I find most of the restriction is. Of course, the site just doesn't, lend itself to good infiltration, so they can't really do what I'd like them to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next, that's the end of the zoning changes. So that's basically.
That's all the stuff that goes to town meeting.
That's all the stuff that's going to go to town meeting. The rest of the stuff is just changes that all keep everything consistent. Okay? So the next one is subdivision of land. So Chapter 202, subdivision of land, design standards and improvements. The general requirements was changed to add the word volume of containment runoff as a design standard requirement. Before it was just the flow rate. So now we're adding volume because we don't want more volume of water to flow. We want, them to match the volume. So stormwater management, the next section requires that peak runoff must not be higher following development than prior to development. Before it actually allowed some increase, now no increase. Requires, was not in compliance with any of the state regulations, by the way. So now we're bringing everything up to state code. Requires a storm.
have we got the book yet?
We're still going off the 2008 one, still wasn't even required back in 2008. Our subdivision bylaws are very old.
You said
Yeah.
they were coming out with a new.
Still not yet, no.
Oh,
that
so
was
you haven't got the information.
I haven't gotten the revised one, not even the draft of the revised one yet. But we know that they're going to be in line with the EPA's MS4 requirements, so I have an idea what they're going to be.
Get it?
All right, so, it also requires the storm sewers with drains, we don't call them storm sewers, be based on certain storms, a 25-year storm instead of a 10-year storm, that culverts are based on a 50-year storm, not a 25-year storm, and that detention basins are based on the 100-year storm rather than a 25-year storm. Again, this brings everything up to current standards, okay? It also requires the storm designs are based on the runoff method for Soil Conservation Service Technical Release number 20. We call it SES TR20. It allows for the use of high-density polyethylene, which is called HDPE pipe, in storm sewers, as opposed to the old school where we needed reinforced concrete pipe everywhere. We don't require that anymore. That's not an industry standard. So the next section, design standards and improvements, requires a catch basins be located on both sides of the roadway at intervals of not more than 250 feet rather than 400 feet. And the catch basins have 4-foot or greater sumps below the invert rather than the 30-inch sumps, which that is not typical anymore. We don't do that. It requires a runoff be treated prior to connecting to the municipal system. For some reason that wasn't in there before, but now we absolutely won't allow anybody to connect to the town system unless they treat it first. It allows for low-impact development features within open space reservations. It allows for low-impact development features within the right-of-way. So these are all for open space planning. I think it's a good idea to add some leniency within open space that you can do a low-impact development, you can do some green infrastructure, and it still be considered open space. So that's what that does. It references the Mass Department of Public Works has been changed to Massachusetts Department of Transportation. That's just typos and nomenclature. That's the end of the subdivision changes. Okay. Next is the site plan and special permit regulations and procedures, which are from the planning board. So the first one is other permits and variances. We now include the Stormwater Division and Department of Transportation in a list of permit sources. Those are two new things that people need permits from. In the calculations, we have revised it to refer to the Chelmsford DPW Stormwater Management Regulations, again, for a list of design requirements, so you're not referencing many different places for design requirements. It allows a saturated hydraulic conductivity be determined using the Rawls rate associated with the soil or by performing one of the approved tests from Mass DEP. Before, we were allowing perk tests. We didn't actually allow perk tests because the state won't allow it since 2008. So, again, bringing it up to code. Requires the stormwater management systems allow for shutdown and containment to isolate the drainage system in the event of an emergency spill or otherwise an unexpected event. And that is a specific requirement from MS4 that they need to be able to be shut down so that they will not contaminate an impaired water body that is impaired for that pollutant. And designs to include low-impact design, LID, and green infrastructure techniques when feasible.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, how does one set up for shutdown and containment in this situation? What is it?
So you actually have a vault that has a valve, shut-off valve in it. And
Okay.
it goes right before it enters either a water body or the town
okay,
system.
understood, yeah.
We require them to install a shut-off valve that can be manually shut off in the case of a spill.
Yeah, a board you can drop into to
And
block
that's-
it or something like that, yeah.
What is that?
It'd be like a board dropping in a sluice,
Kind of think of like a water gate,
a lot of water.
like
gate.
like a wheel that you would turn.
Yeah.
It actually, they use water gates.
Lexington had one, they didn't use it in like 15, 20 years, when they had the massive flood down there.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
So you,
Needs to be
so you need to exercise those. Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Supposed to
why
exercise them once a year, yeah.
they're included in the operation and maintenance plan for each facility that has one.
Okay.
It's included that they need to be exercised at least once a year.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Somebody thought of it.
that's true. No, these are good questions. All right, so site improvements. It requires development to include sufficient open spaces that serve a dual function of providing recreational areas and assisting in management of stormwater runoff through the use of LID and green infrastructure. It allows for the use of permeable materials for sidewalks and encourages the use of LID practices for sidewalks and paved areas. It allows for the use of permeable pavement for driveways and parking lots and encourages that islands, parking bays, and parking lot perimeters include LID techniques. So these are all still subject to your approval, to my approval. It's not like a straight up, everybody can do it everywhere. It still needs to make sense.
Are we still
Yes.
requiring curbing everywhere?
No, that has been removed as it's not required to be a straight curb
in-
everywhere.
That was in the other slide.
Yeah, that was in the
There's
other
a couple
slide.
different options, and one was edging,
Yeah,
right?
you can do, you
can
can
edge
do
now.
saw cut, you can do, yeah, you can do
just edge,
edging.
though. You can edge.
Yeah, you can do, all different kinds of curbing. That's like no curbing.
Yeah, that's why I was looking at that, saying, oh, that's neat. I mean, it goes into the rocks and disappears.
Yeah. Yep. So there are all kinds of things that we're now allowing because we're taking away that restriction of saying everything must be curbed.
Yeah.
So that's what you had, talked about
Gotcha.
when we did some of the work sessions, so. So for site utilities, encourages the use of LID site planning and design strategies. The next one is requires that trash areas be secure and reviewed for drainage impacts. Oftentimes, they like to put catch basins right near dumpsters, and this is kind of encouraging them not to do that. It's not a really great practice. It's in the least attractive part of the development, so they put a catch basin and a dumpster there. Landscape plan, again, requires that landscaping plans incorporate LID stormwater management techniques. So we're just encouraging, saying LID over and over again, hoping that they get the idea and provide LID. All right, that's the end of that section. And the next one is the new DPW stormwater regulations, which were created to conform with the MS4 requirements. So, pretty boring stuff. Land disturbance permit, including stormwater management plan. The stormwater management plan has to include a summary of pre- and post-development peak rates and volumes of stormwater runoff. The low-impact development site planning should be used to the maximum extent feasible. Erosion sediment control plan must be included. Operation and maintenance plan must be included. Submission of an as-built drawing within 1 year of completion of construction is now a requirement.
Haven't we always had that? Is that new?
It's enunciating it again. It was always in the
Okay.
decisions that we included
Yeah.
it, but this, it actually adds it to one of our bylaws.
Okay.
To say, this is something that we are requiring and is enforceable by the bylaw, not just the decision.
Gotcha. Okay,
That's why we
good.
did
That's
this.
a good-
Is that standard 1 year? Just seems like a long time in the, for a
Well,
requirement for an
well, in the
as-built.
decisions, it's before occupancy.
Yeah.
So
that's what I would
this
expect.
allows, like, it's enforceable by the bylaw if it extends over a year.
Okay.
All right, so.
It just
if
adds another
they
level of,
dilly-dally too long, we can whack them harder.
yeah,
Okay.
just gives us the authority to do that
Yeah.
through the bylaw. And inspection and enforcement of sites before, during, and after construction just allows all inspections to be done. So the next one for the stormwater regulations, it requires all of our systems to be designed. So I still have within the 2008 Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook. Oh, we're on the next slide, please.
Christina, go
Yeah.
back.
Oh, go back, sure.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you tie the as-built to the occupancy permit? Why would you let it go longer? Because, I mean, if you get an
we don't.
as-built and it's non-compliant and it's a year later, tough luck.
It just doesn't come
know,
in that quick.
we
They don't come
do.
in that quick.
We do. We do. This is required by MS4. The MS4 permit says we have to have language that requires
Oh.
as-built
You're simply
drawings
matching it to the
within.
state regs.
I'm simply saying that this is like one more level,
All right.
and it's, we already do it in the decision, that you're required to have an as-built before occupancy. If for some reason they have occupancy, they still haven't provided an as-built.
Okay.
So
And the
there is another
decision
reason. No, that's a good question, and I forgot my other reason, and now you just reminded me of my other reason. There's a
Okay.
good reason. There are some developments that happen that are not tied to occupancy. So we have had, for instance, I'm not going to be specific, but there was a parking lot improvement that included a large drainage structure. The building already existed. They were already occupied. It had nothing to do with occupancy. So they built the infiltration system, and then we're gone. And we still don't have an as-built for it.
Okay.
So this ties the as-built to this. So
Gives
we
you the
can, this
leverage.
can cover things that don't have an occupancy permit.
Okay.
Thanks for reminding me. I'll add it to my notes.
Okay.
Make sense now? Okay. All right. So, the next one, the regulations, we're requiring that, we're just making sure that they are in compliance with the 2008 Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, which is going to be revised. We don't know when, but once that gets revised, it's an easy switch for the DPW to be able to revise these regs so that we're in compliance with whatever the current regs are. Since both state and federal stormwater requirements are changing soon, which I just said, the DPW stormwater regulations can be modified whenever any changes happen to the state or federal. We can very easily just add that here. It meets additional requirements for projects with stormwater discharges to an impaired water body, which I said before with the shut-off gates, right? So if you're discharging to an impaired water body, or a TMDL, which we don't have any total maximum daily loads, but if we do get one, it allows us to have additional requirements. So let's say we know, Beaver Brook is impaired for fecal coliform, for instance. We can say, if you're discharging to the Beaver Brook watershed, you need to treat your runoff for fecal coliform. You need to provide treatment for that specific impairment for that water body.
Okay.
Okay? Meets requirements for record keeping and annual reports. Well, these are all MS4 requirements. So this is where the next one, let's say, slide 17. The technical part of it, MS4 requires new development to treat 90% removal of average annual load of TSS and 60% removal of average annual load of total phosphorus. However, for redevelopment, 80% removal of average annual load of TSS and 50% removal of average annual load of total phosphorus. The stormwater designs standards And again, drainage pipes and swales must accommodate the 25-year storm event. We went over this last time, the different year storms that they need to comply with. Culverts must accommodate the 50-year storm event. Stormwater basins must accommodate the 100-year storm event. Again, it's all just making sure that everything matches.
Okay.
And finally, page 18, slide 18, repercussions. So if we don't revise our codes, then the stormwater regulations remain antiquated and non-cohesive with the new stormwater bylaw. The town would be not compliant with the EPA Ms4 permit, and the town could get fined by EPA, which we don't want to do that. And then slide 19, the benefits include that it encourages better landscaping and green infrastructure, which is what you had mentioned we wanted to do. It improves water quality, encourages groundwater recharge, it improves erosion control, it improves the aquatic and wildlife habitat, because we're treating for impaired water bodies, and compliance with the EPA permit, because you can't leave that one out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any
And-
other questions?
Yeah, well, Nancy had a comment.
Yeah.
She found,
I just had a comment.
Yeah.
I did find in the definitions section of the Chelmsford Stormwater Regulations revised,
Yeah.
a definition for land disturbing activity.
Okay.
If anybody is interested, it is any activity that causes a change in the position or location of soil, sand, rock, gravel, or similar earth material, results in an increased amount of runoff or pollutants, measurably changes the ability of a ground surface to absorb waters, involves clearing, grading, or excavating, including grubbing, or results in an alteration of drainage characteristics. So that sounds to me like simply cutting down trees is not included in that definition.
It didn't say clearing there, this is like.
Yeah, I did say clearing.
Yeah,
So
so
would
you
it,
clear the
would
whole
that,
lot.
if you cleared the whole lot, I guess it would, but certainly if you're simply doing understory,
I don't want to regulate everybody every time they cut down a tree.
no kidding.
Right.
That's my
No,
point,
that's
is
not
I
the
don't want
intent,
to.
yeah.
Yeah,
But however, I did
Yeah.
have that
Do one
question
trade.
come up a few years back, and I ran it through EPA, actually in person, said, hey, what happens when you're just cutting and not grubbing? Is it still
Yeah.
is it still considered disturbance? And they said, it is considered disturbance when you just cut an acre or more. So from then on, I've said, cutting an acre or more, you're disturbing. You're changing the drainage characteristics. They were live trees, and it was a forest, and now it's not live forested area. So yeah, you're changing the characteristics. That makes sense.
okay.
So, but yeah.
all right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So
That's pretty
can
good.
what can we vote on?
Yeah, so because this is a public hearing for town meeting, the planning board is required to make a recommendation to town meeting. You would,
But we're
whenever
also-
you're comfortable, either tonight or at your next meeting, closing the hearing and then making your recommendation.
Aren't we supposed to open it up to the public?
Yes,
Of
we
course,
are,
yeah.
and we will do that. But, although I don't see a great deal of public out there.
No, but
However, this
You
is a
need to.
public hearing. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on this?
As well as Zoom. See if there's
Yeah,
anyone on
I'm
Zoom.
looking at the Zoom, as our Zoom dial-in. Yeah, the call-in number, 929-205-6099. Give this a minute to people to raise their hands, or otherwise let me know. Although I'm seeing, this is actually, we only have 7 participants on the Zoom. So, and I know most of them. So,
I'll make a motion to close the public input.
I would like to have it kept open another night anyway, just to make sure that we don't get somebody, I mean, this could be really easily, anybody else have another comment on another night?
well, I don't think there's any danger in doing that.
No, the only reason I look at it is somebody's gonna say, you know, we haven't had enough time getting stuff past town meeting as it is.
Well, there is
Somebody could
that.
somebody could easily say we're doing on the 11th hour or the.
You've traditionally kept zoning
Kept it
public
up for
hearings open.
one round anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do that. If it's okay with you, let's leave this open for one round. but I'll have to say, it looks pretty good to me.
I don't see a big issue.
I don't see any issues.
Well done.
So that'd be a motion to
Thank you.
continue to September 22nd.
Second.
I'll motion to continue to.
Okay, moved by Paul, second by Henry.
I don't know if you want me making motions.
Yeah, well, Paul made it.
Yeah.
It just sounded like you.
Just no.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Deirdre, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Good, okay. And Eric, I see Erica out there. I figure she'll pipe up if she has something to say. But, hello, Erica.
Hello, yes, I'm all good.
Okay. Now, the second one is we have a portion of this which is planning board regulation, right? Now,
Yeah, so that needs to be advertised. That's not included in this
okay,
legal
so
ad.
that, you'll take care of the advertising for
Yep.
that.
What
third-
What is it? Planning board what?
Well, there are four things that we're looking at here. One is the town meeting changes to the bylaws.
Yep.
One is, which has to go to town meeting and requires a public hearing. The second is changes to the planning board regulations, which requires a public hearing,
Correct.
but doesn't have to go to town meeting. The fourth one is the DPW, who can write their own regulations. And the third one,
Subdivision,
the subdivision stuff, which,
which was noticed
Yeah.
in tonight's public hearing, but does not need to be voted by town meeting.
It's fine.
okay, but,
Okay.
so we could
Vote.
pass on the
Vote on
subdivision, or we can simply,
Subdivision, yeah.
I'll tell you what, why don't we
Leave 'em
just
open
wait
till
till the
the
next
next
meeting?
Let's give her one. She did a good job.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a
yeah,
very
she should
good
get an
presentation.
applause for this.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, I think that takes care of that. Why don't we just get the minutes cleared out? Do we have minutes here? I believe I've seen them.
So are you going to go back to new business?
Yeah, we'll go back to new business.
We did not see
So
them.
the first minute from 5:26, I was present. I actually made a couple motions in there, but I think I was a couple minutes late. So it says I'm absent, but I wasn't.
Okay, can we fix that?
Yes.
All right, Evan's got that one. Any other changes on the 526?
Yeah, I don't think I was absent either.
What, the question is, we didn't see these come across.
I don't remember
haven't seen
being
them?
No, they weren't emailed this
absent
week.
from a meeting in forever.
That's why I'm,
Okay, in that
So I'm
case,
asking to-
I
Yeah.
suggest
both
we
of these
defer
should
until
defer.
people have had a chance to actually look at the text.
I
looking at 'em now.
don't know why we're not getting stuff emailed to us anymore. I actually almost missed this meeting because I hit my phone, it didn't come up having a meeting tonight.
Yeah, I was looking for the email
Yeah.
myself, and I had to go to the town website just because I was a little confused.
You know, I mean, we used to get them by paper all the time. Then it was easier by email. And if we're not getting them emailed, it's a problem.
I mean, I'll check with Colleen. Normally, we send them out on a
It's-
Friday.
Yeah, I was
just-
looking back on Friday, I didn't see it.
I-
Unless I
I
deleted
got
it.
automated notification, but I didn't get a notification from your office.
Okay.
All right, then let's defer the minutes.
I mean, I hate deferring
Yeah.
minutes because we're
Yeah.
getting further and further
Further
behind all
behind,
the
we've
time.
got to get this cleaned up.
But,
I agree. And we are back to new business. Number one, scheduling work sessions.
Sorry, I missed the half hour here just because
Yeah, I know.
I wanted, and
Because you didn't get the email, you
I
know?
didn't get the email.
Yeah. Okay,
So,
Work
can
session.
I ask a couple questions
yes.
about the
you-
work session?
Sure, go ahead.
Did we talk about, I see you had here, because I was the one that brought up operations, but we were talking about operations meeting, like, we were gonna talk about how things are happening. Did that ever happen as far as?
That piece we didn't.
No,
really
so,
touch on.
if you recall at the last meeting, I think Deidre brought up the term operations, and I suggested bringing in the vendor who operates the town's online permitting system. So they are here with us this evening via Zoom. They're prepared to do kind of a high-level intro as to the planning board module. This speaks to what happens behind the scenes related to public hearing, legal ads, noticing of abutters, scheduling of meetings that have a direct impact on planning board business. So if you'd like to learn more about operations in that sense, Full Circle Technologies and their team are on Zoom, and they can go through a 15-minute, 20-minute kind of presentation.
Yeah, I think that would
I can
have
tell
some
you
value.
that online permitting for the planning board is in the queue. It will be happening. Timeline is, outwards of at least 6 months. There are other departments that are in the queue. But this will be coming. And as I mentioned, it's not something that the planning board will use directly. Staff and applicants will be using on the back end.
But we would have access to it.
Yeah, anybody would have access to it.
So would
correct.
this be would this act as, remember we talked about the filing system of all of the different documents that have come through over a period of a
It would serve for
as a
a
filing
document system for that particular application.
Yeah.
Moving forward over a long period of time, you could search by address, and anything associated with that address would come up in addition to planning board.
But yeah, I
So they're on the Zoom if you'd like
yeah.
to.
Why don't we get the elevator speech here,
Sure.
if we could?
Colleen, could you,
There's Dylan.
and he may want to share his screen. Anyone here from Full Circle?
Yeah, Dylan.
Can you hear me okay?
Is on here. I see her.
Yes, we hear you.
We have Keith and Dylan here, yes.
Dylan can share his screen.
Perhaps I should maybe just start by quickly introducing what is already there in Chelmsford and kind of talk about, then we'll get into planning itself. Does that sound good?
Yes, please do.
So basically, we're talking about Permitize, the online e-permitting system, building department, health department, fire prevention, open burning, dog licensing. All these modules are currently live. The clerk's module is next in queue, so business licenses, things like that. And then, as I mentioned, so planning board is in the queue. So if anyone is interested, we can take a quick look at the existing modules, real just very high level, or we can get jumped in and look at some planning modules from other communities. Just let us know.
Yeah, let's look at a planning module from another community.
Yep, sure thing. Let me pull up Norton. And I'll be able to share my screen?
Yes, you can now.
Great. Okay, can everyone see my screen okay?
Yep. Town of Norton.
Yep. So in this module, we're kind of talking about two interfaces. There's the staff side, goes over here, and there's an applicant side over here. So applicants will register with an account. They're going to save personal details about themselves. This is going to be cross-departmental as well, so this is not just planning that we're talking about. But if I log in, every applicant will have their own homepage that has all their information on it, how to profile any licenses that I have, expiration dates of those licenses, workers' comp policies, installers for septic systems, establishments, whatever is relevant to active departmental modules at that time is saved in my profile. Applicants can come in here, go to new application, they would choose between whatever the available departments are at that time. So in this case, that's planning and ZBA. They've got a slew of application types here that they can choose from. So, approval not required, definitive subdivision, preliminary subdivision, site plan review, special permit modification, zoning board applications. This is a pretty normal gambit, but the forms that we have here are up to the community. We pull them in. When we go to the actual application forms here, these are going to be dynamically linked to an extract of the community's assessor database. So an applicant comes in here and chooses a street name. That's going to refine the results of a street number. That will either pull in everything that it knows or pull in a drop down for a unit number or map block lot. Things that it knows like zoning, year built, any flags that we're taking from CAMA or from GIS will pull in. Owner information comes in automatically, applicant information comes in from my profile, and I would basically fill out this application form. We enforce sort of mandatory conditional rules, so the community gets to say, these fields are always mandatory before the applicant can even submit, or if I check this off, this section opens up, things like that. as applicable to the kind of flags we get from a community, we also can pull in parcel-based flags like wetlands, historic districts, flood zones, different zones, things like that. Those can conditionally affect what's mandatory in the form, different subforms that open up thereunder. If I quickly jump over here to the staff side, we'll take a look at the staff side interfaces here. So whereas the applicant is connected to only the applications that they've submitted or that have been connected to them after the fact, the staff side sees everything here. So all these ones in green here in Norton are new applications that are applied online by public applicants, and they come in all here. Staff also has the ability to fill in things from the back end. So if somebody hands you a piece of paper, you can come in here and do the same thing as before. All these headers are sortable and searchable, so as I start to type in a street name or whatever it is, it'll automatically start to pull up results here. There's also like an assigned planner here, so I can sort by my name and pull things up. Some high-level color codes to see what's going on. All of these will be receiving attachments, so everything's going to roll up to this paperclip. So any plans, letters, publications, anything like that is all going to be filed right here. And these also roll up to the parcel, and I'll take a look in a little bit to Parcel Management, which is going to be common to all departmental modules. If we come in, and this one, you know, you can take a look at any of these applications. Let me get out of my search here. We come in here to maybe like an A&R, for example. And I click on this little I button. This opens up what we call the status panel, or the transaction panel. So these are all the workflow steps that are configured for a community. Now, a lot of the time, these are going to include things like sign-offs. This is your interdepartmental reviews. You trigger emails to different departments, get approvals, disapprovals, holds, etc. Preliminary attachments here. So these can be made mandatory, for example, that you need to get these before sort of releasing it or releasing a status to the next step. Notice of filing here, and maybe Dylan, if you want to speak a little to some of these transactions here in Norton.
Some communities have like a formal notice of filing that goes to the clerk. Some communities just use a regular sign-off where the clerk will just log in and just click a button to say that they approve. Otherwise, whatever forms or documentation that needs to be generated in the process of this application, we can sort of pull those in the steps that it should be in here.
Yeah, here's another round of attachments for supporting documentation. So this is pretty idiosyncratic to planning, zoning, and Concom modules, where you might have different chunks of attachment transactions. So these are the ones you need at this step. These are the ones that may come later. These will become assigned, create a folder that the documents can be uploaded to from either applicant or staff interfaces. Online payment can be done here, so we connect with the payment vendor of the community's choosing. I believe City Hall Systems is used in most, if not all, modules currently in Chelmsford. So we'll use any online payment provider. We connect through an API, which is just a handshake between the two software. So invoices created and permanized get sent to whatever payment provider you guys are using. Applicants can pay online with credit card, electronic check. It all gets updated in real time. Here's a transaction for public hearings. So these can either be entered in directly here, or they can pull from a bank of preset public hearings. Public hearing notice. So this will mark that notice has been created. And I don't know, Dylan, maybe if you can speak to a Norton. I know some communities, I think Eastern also had a template to generate that actual notice itself as well.
We often have, a generated notice that can be, emailed to the correct newspaper or submitted as needed, but just a way where you already have a form in place and it can just be filled in with the information from each of these applications.
Yeah, so there are lots of opportunities for known information to pull into other places. So anything that comes from the application form itself or from Parcel Management that pulls from GIS or CAMA can autofill into various template forms and generate letters, things like that. Here we have a deadline planner, which will capture some important dates, and it can mathematically calculate different deadlines. So I don't know, Jill, if you want to speak to some of these categories here.
Yeah, usually state regulated deadlines, but some of our communities also like to give themselves, an additional deadline for certain things, like extra space. We have different deadline planners for different types of applications submitted here. And this is only to the staff. That way they can just keep track of things. the public doesn't need to see this, but it's able, the staff is able to sort of keep everything on track as they go.
And that's a good point, because there are certain transactions that will have different rules. So an applicant, so just switching quickly back over to the applicant interface, will have access to any of these application types across all the different active departmental modules. And some of these will update in real time. So for example, sign-offs often will update in real time. So the applicant will see who's waiting to sign off, what those results are. Other ones may or may not show. So a good example is in the health module, a food inspection does not show to the applicant because that's a surprise thing. So it's really up to the community as to what to release when to the applicant. And these workflow steps are customizable by the community, but we have a variety of templates and workflows that can be pulled from. Here's our next transaction, just going down the list is this decision. So pretty straightforward. You've got different radio buttons for statuses, pull in what meeting that decision was made on, the result. You'll have a history of decisions that'll be categorized there. There's a transaction to upload the endorsed plans, and then a final transaction for the staff attachments. So this is a pretty normal workflow, but it'll be a little different community to community. And so when we are in the beta site stage with any community, we kind of throw something together. We take your forms, we take your workflows as described to us, we give you a sandbox, and we work with the department sort of back and forth for how long it takes before you guys want to go live, so to make sure that it's your forms, your processes, and all the rules are built in here. Let me quickly jump over to this parcel management. And so parcel management, as I mentioned briefly before, is across the board, all departments have access to it. And this is your tabulated view of all the assessor database records that we have here. And this is what serves as the bank for what we pull into individual forms. Now, here in Norton, it's pretty straightforward. I think this is just coming from CAMA. I think in Chelmsford, even today, we do have some historic flags that are dynamically calculated according to year built that's coming from CAMA. A variety of communities will also send us yes/no flags from GIS for anything like flood zones, wetlands, whatever it may be. And we can use those various flags when we're developing workflows to automatically send emails to different parties when that comes up, or create a new section that opens up in the form pursuant to there being a flood zone or multiple zones, or a particular parcel being on a particular zone. It may open up a certain workflow, send an email to someone, things like that. So there's a lot of headroom depending on the information you can give us as to what we can get in here, automate or sort of semi-automate as we're going through. And then all the communication typically happens within this program, such that I can send chats to applicants here. So not only are applicants attaching attachments here, I can also communicate with the applicants right here. And these have been shown to be court admissible. These are all date and time stamped. These can trigger emails to the applicants, but ultimately these will go directly on the applicant's homepage. And the idea there is that you don't want to get just an email that goes out into space. You want the applicant to reply via the chat, and then you have this sort of case study log all here for all communications against this application, all the attachments against this application. You can see all the records on parcel here on the homepage, and also on the on the parcel management. Everything has an application status. Yep.
I'll also mention there that this is very helpful when it comes to the actual planning board. It's just one line here. It'll include all of the information needed to talk about this particular project. So if Keith opens up this one application, you can see that you have all the attachments, you have all the chats, you know all the information that's going on with this project. You can see all of the comments from different departments, and it's all in one place. So you don't have to go around looking for emails, going to Dropbox, going to different places to find all the information you need. It's all going to be right here in one place. When you talk about this in a meeting or a hearing, it's all in front of you.
And that's a good point, because some of our communities have basically said, we don't need stacks of papers in the meetings anymore. We just have our laptops and our iPads, and we just pull up the software and just do a quick search and pull things up on the screen. So we have definitely heard that this also helps with just the volume and filing cabinets and things like that. And the other thing, this is just very convenient and easy for applicants as well. An applicant doesn't need to come in. The only consideration is maybe some very large documents. You may need to still have a scanner in the office to scan for if applicants don't have there. But we find that a lot of contractors, especially engineers, will have those big scanners in their own offices anyways they can do. Now, another important thing is, and this is sort of a community-to-community thing, but we do offer also a public view, which means that to whatever degree that you allow, you can put this on a read-only, no login interface just for members of the public that they can then go in, do searches, see attachments, see decisions, things like that. And you can choose sort of yes, no, show attachments, yes, no, show fees, things like that. That's up to the department. But we have a lot of communities that are basically saying, hey, it's the Freedom of Information Act. All this is public record, and we'll show, whatever is relevant to show to the public. But that's totally up to the discretion of the community and the department, and we can sort of help guide you folks through that as well. We could certainly go a little deeper, but I know there was just a time, we don't have too much time. So let us know if there's any particular questions or anything we want to go through.
No, thank you. That's a very good overview, I thought. When is this going to be implemented for planning?
I would say no earlier than 6 months.
All right, so sometime next year.
Yeah.
Hiring someone to input all this information? Who's
Well,
doing
the
it?
applicant. The applicant's responsible for uploading their information.
And then it automatically switches from internal?
I think you
All right.
find it much like the permitting process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which the
And
only
when
complaint
we-
I have is sometimes you file a permit, and you go back 2 or 3 days trying to wait to find out how much you owe. It still, you have to physically log on.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so.
Well, a lot of the towns do that better. A lot of other towns will email you when you say your permit is ready. I find some towns, it's, you physically are going in 2 or 3 times, 4 times to see if your permit's ready.
But like our decisions are gonna be able to be pulled up, you're gonna input that, not a contractor. right?
Yeah, so we can,
You'll be
so as.
doing,
as-
you'll be doing
as-
half of it at least.
Yeah, so this is not really intended for the planning board to be users, more like end users, if you want to use it during a meeting, rather than the electronic agendas, we could switch to this platform. But yes, staff will be spending a lot of time on this. As Kyle mentioned, I mean, if we want to use it where we're uploading planning board decisions, we can do that. It has that capability.
So you can look back quicker.
You could look back, right, so we're at, right. So there's, it has the ability to put more documentation on than we currently do with the electronic agenda.
Just making time to get it in.
So what I'm saying is, we're going to pursue this and we're going to advance this. When we get to that point, I'll be circling back with the planning board to see what level of engagement you're looking for at your meetings. And then pointers like Henry has from a user's experience. But if the planning board, if you're not using it at all, you'll understand that applicants are using it, the public can engage with it.
This is not new.
No, it's not.
A lot of towns are doing this
No, many
everywhere.
towns are using it. It has tremendous amount of technology and capability within it, and different towns use it to different degrees.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing.
Right, so the reason I brought this up is that I think at the last meeting, Deidre was looking for more information as to how a staff checklist exists or could exist. So this came to mind.
Yeah, this is actually.
Right.
It's all there on every
So-
project,
Yeah.
right?
So remember the,
You're using it
the
now,
road.
right?
I use it for the building department.
Okay.
So I'm going in, doing reviews, signing off on behalf of planning board at certain thresholds, again, foundation permit, building permit, occupancy permit.
Do you remember we went through the process with the grist mill 2, where they had to get, Colleen went back and got all the documents? This would put them all in one spot, right? All the documents. So if a public hearing lasted for 6 months or a year or extended, all the documents that would be presented over the period of the time of the hearing
Could be used in that fashion.
could be sitting in here.
It could be used in that fashion. For purposes of the planning board, and I think we'd have to talk, does the planning board prefer to use this platform during a public meeting where you're tracking everything that's being submitted? Or would you prefer the electronic agenda? We're going to continue to using the electronic agenda for the public interface, but I think the board's going to have to figure out which platform you prefer to use during your meetings.
Well, there's one that, right now, we use it if someone brings in, I'm just using that for an example, because we went back and there was a lot of documents that were presented
Yeah.
over a period of time. But every time there was an electronic agenda, there was only a couple of items that were on the agenda. So she had to go back and look
Exactly.
over a period of
Exactly.
time
So what
And
you're
compile
suggesting
them.
would.
It should be all in one
would likely
location.
be an easier for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be all in the one location. I thought
Yeah.
I saw it, that they
Absolutely,
presented it, that it's
yeah.
there. That would be a great feature.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it all comes down to, either the applicant or staff managing it to make sure that, let's assume under your scenario,
The most
they submit a
revised ones are
revised
in
plan, do you archive the old plans, or do you just leave them as, so there's a lot of things that, we need to
Yeah.
learn as we go, but I agree, at least it provides another option, maybe it's a better option.
Great.
Yeah, I like this. I think at this point, we probably have most of what we need. Do you have a question?
Keep us
Yeah,
organized.
I did have a question on it. This looks like a really great tool, and would be incredibly useful for, as you said, managing a lot of documents over time. The thing I'm struggling with, and maybe Evan can talk to it, is that software products don't last forever. They have a finite life. And if this is the method that we're using to get to all of the historical documentation on permitting, what is the end-of-life plan for this software tool? Because you have to have one, because ongoing, you have to be able to find all these documents.
Yeah,
You
I don't
can't
have
lose,
the
you
answer
can't
to
lose
that.
your index system
As Kyle mentioned, the building.
once you change to a new software tool.
Building module,
You almost have to keep both.
You,
as Kyle.
but you won't have any support for it at some point in
This is all backed up.
life.
Yeah.
I get it, it's all backed up.
Through
But
their
this
software,
thing is a database that does the addressing of all these documents.
So as Kyle
if you
mentioned,
don't
and
have
again, he can
access
speak
to
to
this
more
tool,
detail on this.
you can't
I think
find
what
the
Kyle
other
said was,
documents.
when the building department went on this particular module, prior to this module, they had a different vendor. And if I understand Kyle correctly, Full Circle Technology was able to pull the previous
did a
vendor's
migration.
database into this database. I'm also aware, and Kyle, you can elaborate, I believe you do annual updates where you add features and things of that nature.
So should I speak to the data retention and the sort of lifespan?
Yeah.
So this, what we're looking at, the version of the software is called Pervious 2020. This has been out since about 2018. We have some communities using Pervious Classic back about 10 plus years ago. Those are really the two main iterations of this software. Everything is on non-proprietaries. It's either on, the old generation is on either MS Access or SQL. This is on MySQL, which is sort of the non-Microsoft version of the same. We import from lots of vendors all the time. We have everything sort of crazy backed up on the back end. And it's all totally the town's information. The town owns all this data. We have never once ever stopped supporting any version of the software. This version that we've just done is probably the most robust, according to its sort of contemporaries that we've done ever. And it really pulls in a lot of things we've learned from our commissioners and inspectors and different boards. But it is all totally the town's information. If for whatever reason, we were hit by a meteor and all of, the whole company blew up, everything is backed up in Europe. We have, lots of, data retention and disaster management policies, and everything is non-proprietary. So just as we imported all the building data from the previous vendor, which was on SQL, we would be able to do a data dump if anything happened in the relationship. That would be a serviceable database that contained all the appropriate mappings to reconstruct the database. It'd be a different front end with whatever any other new vendor, but this version of software is going to last a long time. The back end is all non-proprietary. MySQL, which is the non-Microsoft version of MS SQL. The point here is for data retention. So we're well aware of that sort of an important factor. We do have some communities that do also get periodic backups, data dumps. That I think is more for a security thing than actual any functional purpose. To be honest, you're not going to be able to do a hell of a lot with it, just with the raw data. You probably need a vendor to pull it into something else, but it is something that has been done. But there's really no reason to concern. We've got lots of communities across New England, mostly in Massachusetts. We've been in business for over a decade. And we've got, communities using, like Eastern, for example, is a great example. They've been using the planning module along with many others for the better part, if not a whole decade. And they're actually just right now looking into upgrading to the current iteration, this one, Permanized 2020.
No, it's like I said, I thought it would be interesting to the planning board,
Thank you very
see
much.
where we're going with it, food for thought. All right,
Okay.
thank you, Kyle.
Thanks a lot, and
Thank you.
we'll stay tuned. Okay.
Well,
Back-
the other thing that
Yep.
I had brought up last time was, I wanted to talk about how the board was handling board business and staff issues as far as getting things done and having us looking more professional. I see that was conveniently forgot. I don't know if anybody else remembers me saying anything about that.
Yeah,
No, I agree. I think it was on Tim's agenda to discuss, but I don't,
I haven't got Tim's agenda, so.
no, I mean,
Yeah.
he's not here, but. I thought tonight
I'd like to
ran,
bring
I thought
that up on the
tonight
next
ran
one.
well.
Okay, well, I think that,
That should be in a work session, not.
yeah.
Yeah. That should be in
I
work
think
session.
certainly.
I will keep bringing it up
We'll
until
keep
it
at
gets.
it until we fix it.
And as I said, it's not just staff, it's board, we got different things we need to handle.
Speaking of work session, do we want to schedule another work session? I think what you're talking about is more than just a half hour at the beginning of a meeting.
Probably.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a bigger topic than that. Do we want to schedule a separate work session? And what's people's availabilities? The next possibility, I suppose, would be, September 15th? Well, wait a minute, that's middle of next week.
Yeah.
Is that doable for people? Or is that
I'm
too
not going
soon?
anywhere for the foreseeable future. I've got,
Yeah,
That
Plenty to keep you
particular
busy.
date will not work for me, but
okay, well, I think you
I think it
probably
would be
need to
good if you were
here.
there.
All right, the next possibility would be the 29th of September.
So just for your consideration, I was going to be sending an email tomorrow trying to schedule the next joint meeting with Trammell Crow, Planning Board, Select Board. And based upon meetings prepping for town meeting, Mondays and Thursdays are not available. So we're going to be trying to target a Tuesday or Wednesday within the next 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I just throw that out there as well.
Okay, so
So
that's
your
coming up.
your regularly scheduled meeting for September 22nd is very light. There's no new public hearings that I'm aware of. You continued the
We've
zoning
continued
public
the
hearing.
zoning one.
So the 22nd may be a good
Okay.
night to,
Well, if we want to do that at 6:30, but maybe start the formal meeting at 7:30, we're going to need more time than a half an hour to discuss what you're talking about.
Or after the
I
meeting.
don't even think it's that, I mean.
Well, we need to chew on
We
it.
need to chew on it, yeah.
We do.
Yeah, we really need to chew on that, I think.
why don't I schedule the agenda for 6:30?
Okay,
And you can have an hour-long work session if that's what you want to do.
okay, I just, if we're going to be opening any, well, we will obviously be continuing at least one public hearing.
Yeah,
and I
I
don't
mean,
want to
I'm
have
not
people
aware
wait.
of any new public hearings. As I told you a couple of meetings ago, the development project regulatory is, you had that busy period.
Yep.
You approved a couple tonight. You're aware of a couple that are floating out there, 9 Acton Road's floating out there, but there's nothing that's close to submission.
Okay, good. Well, let's do that at 6:30 on September 22nd then.
Perfect.
So that's work session. We've talked a bit about operations, and this was a very good, well, of course, I'm a software geek, so, I eat
You want
this
to put the
stuff up.
next master plan chapter on?
Yeah, we should get the next
22nd?
master plan chapter up. And we had actually some good discussion earlier on the select board goals, and it sounded to me as if at this point, the smarter thing for us to do is get the master plan finished, now that we understand kind of where they're going with it, and return to that at some point. which seems to get us to the end of the list of new business. Anybody else have anything they want to add? Yeah. Well, there is always that.
Do you want to, motion to adjourn?
I wouldn't object.
Second.
All right. Good night, all.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thanks for coming
Good night.
tonight.